Welcome to our 176th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today's topic involves the ritualistic hazing that takes place on college campuses, military installations, and other places where potential new members of organizations are tested through various painful and often humiliated exercises to see if they are worthy of membership. Our panel will discuss the pros and cons of these practices. Today's panel begins with Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services, followed by Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, senior research chemist, Joe Gaines, former faculty member of the University of Akron and Wadsworth High, and Patty Haskins, member and candidate for re-election to the Wadsworth City Council. Bryan, hazing can be traced all the way back to Plato's Academy in ancient Greece. And in spite of being forbidden and outlawed in many places and institutions, it persists to this day with often dire consequences. Can you explain?
You know, this is a real tough one. I'm not sure there are any pros to this. Just last month, if you've been following the news, a student at Bowling Green died of alcohol poisoning. It's been determined that it was considered accidental, but it was a part of a hazing incident in a fraternity that he belonged to in Bowling Green. And they were all given a bottle of liquor and told to drink it within a certain period of time. From what the news reports, I'm just going off of that. I have no firsthand knowledge of this. And he died several days later when the fraternity delivered him back to his apartment, and he died of alcohol poisoning. I think that we really, on college campuses, military bases, I think the overall rules and the procedures that they have in place are there to stop these types of things. But we know that the mental capacity of young men and young women isn't fully developed until after they're age 21 or 22. So obviously that frontal lobe isn't completely developed for them to make these types of decisions, and putting people through these types of rigorous and embarrassing sometimes situations. And it often results in, long-term sickness, disability, and in some instances death, as in this young man. In today's day and age, I'm not sure what it takes to get the message through to different organizations, fraternities, sororities, military organizations, that hazing is just not acceptable, and it always goes too far. I look back in some of the articles about hazing, and it always goes off the rails. And it starts out as, going around sort of doing, I don't know, maybe like a scavenger hunt for things, or running around campus with your shirt off with your Greek symbol on your chest or something like that, or maybe TPing the dean's house or something. But it always ends up with somebody, getting hurt severely. And I'm not sure what we can do to get this stopped. Now, I don't know if you ever follow, there's two individuals, they're called Key and Peele. They're comedians, and they put on these little skits. Well, they did this one about fraternity branding. And, some fraternities brand their Greek symbols on themselves. And so they're doing this, and it's Omega Pi Omega. Well, when the guy goes to brand him, he brands him with the Omega sign to the side and almost upside down. He's like, bro, look what you did to me. So they try to correct it. Well, after, basically it's a skit that says, this is really stupid, guys. What are you branding yourselves for? But there are fraternities out there that literally brand their members with their Greek symbols. I just find that, and they're proud of it. I mean, they're proud of their Greek fraternity, and they wear that branding. the rest of their lives. I don't know. I'm finding it hard. I can't think of anything that's really positive that would come out of a hazing incident that you can point to. I'm open for discussion on this because I'm not sure. I've watched plenty of SEALs. Their training, that's tough enough. Boot camp is tough enough for young men and young women. I just don't know why we have to take it to the extreme and start hazing people. I will say that I was in Boy Scouts and I am an Eagle Scout. And the first year I went to camp, part of your initiation was that you had to be sort of the cafeteria person. You went up and got the food for everybody. I didn't find that embarrassing. I was not, shamed or anything. I remember around the campfire, a couple of the boys said, hey, the smoke is getting kind of thick. Go over to the next camp and get a left-handed smoke shifter. So a couple of us trundled over and asked, and so, oh, ha, ha, ha. Then we went on a snipe hunt. We all went out into the field and we're hunting for snipe. Well, obviously there's no snipe. Someone had a bag, made it sound like they were catching snipe. I never felt embarrassed. I never felt like anybody was picking on me. That was just something that we were doing. I don't believe anybody got hurt. I don't think anybody felt like they were excluded or anything like that. So, that if you consider that hazing, I guess you could say I was hazed, but I just looked at it as part of our little, first year scouts going to scout camp. That was our little initiation, and there was a pecking order as to what you did. So that's sort of been my experience with it. So.
Well, it all happened in a very Boy Scout sort of way.
Yeah, yeah. I never felt threatened.
Now, you had adult supervision there all the time, though, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. The scoutmaster was out there with the bag, making sounds like, "Oh, I got one. I got one. I caught a snipe." We're all beating the bushes. So yeah, we all got a laugh out of that.
Ron, how about chemistry majors? Did you have fun doing hazing?
The only experience we had, I went to a liberal arts school, and no frats, small school, and the sophomore class was allowed to take the freshmen into a darkened room, put a blindfold on them, and I think I remember having peanut butter stuck in my nose, but that was about it. It was so stupid that the next year our sophomore class decided to do away with it, so we never did it. Well, I got interested in the psychology of this. Why do people do it? And certainly not a psychologist. I did go to a liberal arts school. I had took the freshman required survey. I took an additional course of applied psychology where we looked into propaganda and advertising and that sort of thing. So I've been interested in it, and with over my lifetime trying to observe how we of the human race react to one another and what's behind that. So simplified, you looked at why people do it and why would they accept it and perpetuate it. So I looked into a couple of things, and certainly you mentioned Plato's Academy. Well, if you look at what you read about primitive tribes, for example, the Maasai had to send a young man out. He had to kill his lion, become a member of the tribe. And some theories are that you could sort of explain this on sort of evolutionary psychology, that the group is dying out, old members are dying or leaving in the case of a college frat or graduating. And so you need to bring in young people, and they can't be freeloaders. They have to prove their worth. They have to do something, some coming of age experience, or prove their manhood, or somehow prove that they belong to this group by accepting do these things. They can't be inactive. They have to contribute. Why does it get severity? Well, hazing is in a way group bullying, and has a lot of the same characteristics, and it can make you feel sort of superior because you're making other people feel inferior. And why does it get severe? Well, there's a sort of a group thing going on here too. Individual members can kind of put aside their own moral qualms because the group is doing it, and that's some of that goes on. So why accept it? Well, human beings are really subject to cognitive dissonance. We're able to rationalize a couple of things which are, contradictory at the same time. And for example, this is here's a group, and yeah, I'm suffering for this, but boy, it really is going to pay off. It's going to be a great group, and I'm willing to go along with it. And yeah, it's not as bad as you might think it is, because look at how good it's going to be later. There's effort justification, another term that you could find. You put this effort into this now, and you spent some time and some money, and you've been involved with this group, and now if they want to do this to me, well, that's justified. I can do it. I'm justified in submitting to it, because I put the effort into joining and learning about this group, and so that's the. Another factor that hits our brain is that we might have an illusion of control. Yeah, I know it's bad, but I can handle it, and it's worth doing, and it's not going to be so bad for me. I'm going to be in control here. I can do this. There's the group. You might think, well, okay, I've got a foot in the door now. I've been able to do this. I'm going to be now a member of this group, and when it's over, this is going to be the best group possible. It's going to be, I put the effort into it. It's, I'm now part of this group, and it's going to be, everything that they're going to do is going to be so much better than anything anybody else does. That's part of the cognitive dissonance thing. Yeah, since I've been through this ordeal, it's going to, therefore, these frat parties are better than all the other frat parties. So, and then there's the business, you need to give it back. Why do you perpetuate it? Well, it's done to me, so I'm going to do it to you. And this is part of what the group does, and so I'm going to do it. So these are just a few of the things that looking at in terms of how we as human beings react to one another. And I don't, again, know whether there's, as Bryan says, whether there's going to be a solution for this, and it generally gets out of control, or frequently gets out of control. And but there are some sort of mental, deep psychological reasons for why it takes place, and why we accept it, why people can accept it and perpetuate it. So that's my take. There's lots more things, but that's enough.
Where are you coming from, Joe?
Well, I agree with the word bullying. I think in many cases it becomes like a bully system. I'm totally against any kind of hazing at all. I remember as a freshman at Kent, looking out my window and seeing people running past cars on the highway and hitting the cars with their hands. And I don't know if both the car and the driver of the car and the person doing it were involved, but it was a hazing. It was done for a fraternity. Fraternities can get pretty rough. I don't see anything good about it, except you will hear things said like, well, it helps to bond. It helps to bring people together. It helps solidarity. I don't know if it does or not, but you will hear that argument. Positive outcomes, bonding, two parties, the hazer and the hazy. I don't know, but I don't see any good out of it. I constantly see only bad. In the past, you had, like what we were talking about many times, death, or, anything that's terrible could have happened to the person being hazed.
I read where there have been 52 deaths since the year 2000
Yes.
in the United States. And that didn't count the recent one at Bowling Green. But Patty, there must be a female component to all of this. Where-
Female
And- and-
component in that.
As a female math major, where are you coming from?
Well, when you look at hazing, I know it's been justified as the fact that, as the others have said, that it brings about bonding amongst the group. I also think that their aim is for conformity and
Mhm.
loyalty. That you will do what the group does and what the group says and think the way the group says automatically. And the fact that you are willing to do all of these horrible things that we tell you shows your loyalty to that group. I think within the military and some of the hazing, and Bryan would be able to address this better with his experience being an army brat. Yeah. The fact that, in the military, when you go through boot camp, one of the main objectives is that you are going to do whatever we tell you to do and not question it. And that for a military unit to operate efficiently, you can't be questioning the officer every step of the way. If he says to attack, you attack. If he says retreat, you retreat. You do as said. And it's justified, that type of treatment, so that you have that group think. And it may work in a military situation, but as far as in clubs, organizations, frats, sororities, I don't think that that's a necessity that we should have. I think that, in some ways, human beings have this innate nature that they want to be better than somebody else. Um, we all, the sports teams are shouting, "We're number one." When you go to the Olympics, it's this country is better than that country. And in those organizations, you're trying to promote this idea of we are the best. And you are telling your pledges in the sorority or the fraternity or the new recruits that they're not the best, but if you do all of these things for us, we will make you better. And that's a little scary, because what that is, and even if death doesn't result, it involves one human being demeaning, debasing, humiliating another. And that's something that should never be allowed, and it isn't. I've had experience on both sides of this in college. Even when I first started teaching, one of the organizations, which shall remain nameless, when I first joined it, I noticed the older students were hazing. They had a whole evening of hazing of the incoming students. And that's illegal. I mean, I actually reported it and it was stopped the next day.
Oh, come on, tell us what group it was.
No, I won't do that.
Oh, come on, Patty.
But and I saw it with my own kids. I had a child that, not at Wadsworth, but at another school, that was a victim of hazing, that was between the seniors and the underclassmen. And that was kind of a rite of passage. Seniors were so excited that they could do horrible things to underclassmen, for, after which, of course, the principal of that school and I had a very nice conversation about the illegality of that. But I would like to think that we are better as human beings than to have this need to debase others and to see that this is wrong. And that this idea of trying to bring us all together in uniformity and for loyalty is really a misplaced aim. And we're doing it in all of the wrong ways. Right now there are anti-hazing laws across the country of varying degrees, but it still doesn't seem to stop it completely, because as I think, I forget who was saying that, I think, John, it was you that was saying, or no, it was Bryan, that was saying that a mind is not, a young person's mind is not fully developed till they're about 21 or 22.
Mhm.
And that we're taking kids that are not really thinking and they're being allowed to get away with some of this. And it's too easy for it to get out of hand. I mean, at Bowling Green, no one set out to kill that student. No one, I'm sure, wanted to even make him sick. But because they're young people and they're not fully baked, they're taking it to an extreme, and it tragically results in death. And even one death is too many.
And alcohol seems to be always a part of it in some manner.
And,
Extreme use of
and a big
alcohol.
part now, I think more
Yeah.
so. That seems to be like the frat end of it, I think.
I had a
Listen,
conversation, with my favorite high school band director. And he was telling me that there is a temptation on the part of seniors in the band to want to haze the freshmen. And the reason usually is something like, well, I'm exercising leadership. Well, this favorite band director, whom I raised,
I know what you mean.
take credit for it. He makes it a point every year before anything gets out of hand to explain, you're going to show leadership by giving a model, I forget the exact word now, but a model to follow, to set an example, and not going around trying to bully and humiliate somebody. That doesn't constitute leadership at all.
All you're teaching them is to how to bully and how to humiliate, which is not a good thing.
Well, sometimes in many cases, it seems that people want to harass, haze somebody because they were hazed in the past and they want to make it. I want you to remember what it must be like, what I went through. And that's terrible reasoning for it.
You need to give back.
Yeah.
I think we need to
There's
draw a
40
distinction.
states it's illegal in.
Yeah. I think there has to be a distinction drawn between hazing and some sort of formal training. You look at boot camp. I did not serve in the military. My dad did. So vicariously, I think you could say that I spent probably 13 years in the military. He spent 23 years of his life in it. I never felt like as a family, we were being hazed or bringing any of that into our home. But I think there are times when you can build teams and esprit de corps without hazing people, just that boot camp process of making everybody realize that when you are being shot at, that it's important for you to listen to your sergeant, your lieutenant, and whatever they say has to go, because there are situations. I don't put fraternities and sororities in the same caliber of training as a military soldier.
Oh, absolutely not.
I separate that whole thing out. My little experience at scouting, I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel like they were picking on me. We were all out in the field trying to find snipes. We were all, being the first year, I had to go up. I had to get the meals. I brought them back to the table. I had to clean the table with all the other first year scouts. I didn't feel as though I was being hazed or embarrassed. And as I went through that whole thing, I never felt like I had to somehow have dominion or power over somebody because I was now a second year scout or a fourth year scout or anything like that. It's just that it always, when we take that one step further, someone always gets hurt.
That's the problem. It gets out of hand.
It gets out of hand.
Well, there are other ways of doing bonding too. I'm thinking back on my undergraduate days. For 6 weeks, freshmen had to wear a little beanie with the school colors on it,
that's right.
and wear a large name tag with your name on it. And underclassmen were allowed to stop and quiz you on anything that might be in the student handbook. Nobody ever did, but they probably couldn't remember it any better than we could. But that, again, you knew who the freshmen were. And it was a small school. The time I went there, it started, I think, about 600 students total. And by the time I graduated, it might have been up to 1,000. and it still maintains its membership at around 1,500. It remains a small school, and is by intention, and so that did build a sort of a bond with your fellow members. But again, they're all people, and some people you became friends with, and some people you didn't. But there are ways of doing it besides hazing. In a way, I suppose, if the upperclassmen came up to you and said, what do you know about student government, and tell me, that might have been considered a sort of hazing, but I never really experienced that. So,
Well, I
that's
did,
where it
I
goes
did go
bad.
to boot camp, and I felt like it was 8 weeks of hazing. I would have loved to have had a little beanie instead of a steel pot on my head.
Where it goes
Yes.
bad though is when you're telling someone to go to another camp and do something, or to clean off the table. But even in those contexts, if it's added to that demeaning comments and jeering and laughing at, the effect that this can have upon someone's mental state, I think is very, very dangerous.
Especially if they weren't very stable to begin with.
Exactly. And it only exacerbates the entire situation. And it gets worse the older you get, and promulgates that idea that, hey, it happened to me, I'm going to do this to somebody else. And
Well-
it's really scary.
And
So
then again, too,
Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
well, just that- then again, too, like in the military, I understand why we'd be in the military to a degree. I don't agree with it necessarily, but I understand it. But when I started coaching speech and debate, they had hazing. They really did. We ended it pretty quick.
Yeah.
It was stupid.
Well, I think we've just about run out of time. So thank you very much for a very enlightening discussion. And see you all in 2 weeks.
Right.
Care.
Take care, everybody.
Good luck. Goodbye.